You know what's worse than not getting invited to a stranger's wedding? Not getting invited to your sister's. My name's Caleb. I'm 29. And 2 weeks before my older sister Harper's wedding, I got the kind of message that makes you double take, then laugh out loud because your brain refuses to accept it's real. Hey, just a heads up, guest list's full. We had to make some cuts. Hope you understand, love you. That was it. No call, no explanation. Just that. Like she was bumping me off the dinner reservation, not her wedding. And I wasn't some third cousin or long-lost step-uncle, I was her brother. The same brother who stayed up all night on the floor with her after her first heartbreak. The same brother who loaned her money when she got laid off. Twice. The same guy who literally helped her move across the country when she chased some guy who bailed on her 6 months later. So yeah, I stared at that message, blinking like my phone might suddenly correct itself. Sorry, typo. Of course you're invited, but that didn't happen. What did happen was silence. I called our mom. She picked up fast voice all cheery like she wasn't sitting on a nuclear secret. Hey honey, what's going on? I skipped the niceties. Did Harper seriously leave me off the wedding guest list? There was a pause just long enough to confirm she knew. Then came the sigh. That soft, fake patient sigh she always used when I was being emotional. It's just a wedding, Caleb, don't blow this out of proportion. My jaw clenched. It's not just a wedding, it's my sister's wedding, and I'm not on the list. Oh, come on, they had to keep it intimate budget stuff. You know how it is. No, I actually don't, I said. Because I just saw Harper's Instagram story. She's invited 150 people, including her barista. Silence. Then Mom forced a laugh. Well, you know, she probably figured you wouldn't mind skipping it. I couldn't believe it. After everything I'd done for her, she decided I wouldn't mind missing her wedding. I'd let a lot slide over the years. Harper forgetting my birthday check. Only texting when she needed help moving or money. Sure. Mom treating her like a golden goddess while I got assigned family IT support and moving truck duty normal. But this was next level. So I did something I'd never done before. I cut myself out before they had the chance to finish the job. By the end of that call, I was already Googling flights. If I wasn't family enough to sit at the table, I wasn't going to be around to sweep up their confetti either. I didn't tell them I wasn't coming. I didn't yell or cry or send dramatic texts. I booked myself an all-inclusive vacation to a 5-star resort in Belize, ocean view suite, spa access, private beach, the works. This wasn't just a vacation, it was a message. 2 days later, when their wedding weekend kicked off, I boarded a flight in first-class, champagne in hand, and posted a picture with the caption. Turns out I didn't make the guest list. Good thing I found a better view. Cue the chaos. Cousins I hadn't heard from in months suddenly popped up in my DMs. Bro, where are you? Okay, but also, respect. Please tell me that's an infinity pool. Even my cool Aunt Mona replied, you better come back with a tan and 0 regrets. But the best part, Mom's text. Where are you? Are you seriously missing Harper's wedding over this? You're being dramatic. Dramatic me. I responded with a photo of the beach, blinding white sand, turquoise water, a drink in hand, and turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I wasn't showing up for them. I was showing up for me. The moment I stepped into the resort lobby, I knew I'd done the right thing. The place smelled like tropical flowers and rich people who had nowhere to be. A staff member handed me a chilled towel and called me Mr. Rivers. No one here knew about Harper's wedding. No one here saw me as the backup sibling or the forgotten invite. Here I was a VIP. My suite had floor-to-ceiling windows and a bed that looked like it could grant wishes. I kicked off my shoes, stepped onto the balcony, and just breathed. Later that night, I posted another photo. Sunset, margarita, feet up. When one door closes, make sure the next one has room service and ocean views. The reactions were instant. Laugh emojis, living the dream, spill the tea, you win. Yeah, I did. The next morning, while they were probably posing for photos in pastel linen, I was drinking espresso in a fluffy robe, ordering pancakes with passion fruit syrup. No small talk, no tension, just peace. That's when my phone started vibrating. Not with comments, with calls. I ignored the first few. Then I noticed who was calling. Harper. Mom. Uncle Ray. Even my cousin Jordan. Back-to-back nonstop. Weird. Finally, curiosity won. I opened my phone. First message I saw, from Mom, call me, it's urgent. Then Harper, please answer, I need you. What? I tapped on Jordan's message. Dude, the wedding's a disaster, you're not gonna believe this. My stomach dropped. I wasn't sure if it was karma or comedy, but I was definitely about to find out. I sat up straighter in the pool chair, the sun warm on my chest phone screen glowing like a tiny emergency siren. Part of me wanted to toss it into the ocean and order another drink. But curiosity had a stronger grip. I opened Jordan's text again and started scrolling through the case. Groom dipped mid-reception, one message read. Another Harper lost it. Threw a wine glass, screamed at Aunt Lauren. It's a mess. A third Uncle Greg and your mom got into it in front of everyone. People left early. Bar got shut down. I blinked, processing each word slowly like I'd forgotten how to read. The groom walked out, just left Harper through a glass. This couldn't be real. I opened the message from Harper. Just one line, please answer. I need you. Suddenly, the same family that forgot I existed remembered I was alive. I leaned back and smiled. No rush. I wasn't about to give up this moment, not after what they'd done. I ordered another mimosa instead, set my phone down and watched the waves dance like they were in on the secret. It was funny in a dark kind of way. They excluded me, convinced I didn't matter, and now their picture-perfect day was unraveling faster than a cheap tablecloth in a windstorm. And I wasn't there to help. For once, I wasn't their safety net. The irony was delicious. Later that afternoon, when the sun dipped low and my buzz mellowed into a calm glow, I decided to check the rest of my messages. One voicemail from Mom stood out labeled urgent. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Her voice was tight, rushed, full of that specific panic parents get when the golden child finally burns the house down. Caleb, I don't know what you're doing, but this is serious. Harper is devastated. You need to come home. The family needs you. I scoffed out loud. Now I was needed. Where was this energy when she shrugged off my hurt like it was just bad weather? Where was this concern when Harper sent me that 2-sentence text like I was a background actor? I skipped to the next voicemail. Harper's voice was shaky, quiet, like she'd been crying. Caleb, I know you're mad. I know I should have handled things differently. Please call me. I need you, please. Something in me twinged. Maybe guilt? Maybe not, but it passed quickly. Because I remembered how I felt reading her message the first time. How small it made me. How disposable. She made that bed, let her lie in it. Just before dinner, I got a message from my cousin Marissa, the one person in the family who always had a brain and wasn't afraid to use it. Okay, I know you're ignoring everyone, but you need to hear what happened after the groom left. Call me. I waited about 20 minutes, then curiosity won again. I called. She answered like she'd been holding her breath. Oh my God. Caleb. That was fast. I didn't think you'd call. I had a drink in hand and no plans, I said. What's going on? She didn't even pause. Okay, so get this. During the reception, Harper and Chase, the now ex-groom, got into some sort of blow-up. He accused her of being self-absorbed. Said the wedding was more about her image than their relationship. Then he just walked out. Wait, I said, already grinning. He just bailed. During the party, oh, I'm not done. After he left, Harper had a full-on meltdown. Screaming, crying, throwing things. Your mom tried to calm her down. Didn't work. Then Aunt Lauren made some offhand comment about karma coming for the family. Your mom took offense, and next thing you know, they're shouting in front of everyone. I actually laughed. So the wedding imploded? Worse. Grandma got up, walked to Harper, and said, and I quote, "You reap what you sow, young lady. Maybe next time include your brother." And then she sat down like she dropped the mic. My jaw dropped. Grandma said that, dead serious, and then left. Took her to-go plate and everything. I was speechless, partly from shock, but mostly from awe. Marissa sighed dramatically. It was a mess, Caleb. Like biblical proportions. I swear someone started crying just because they felt left out of the chaos. And now they all want me to fix it. Obviously. That's wild, I said. It's almost like they think I'm still playing the role they wrote for me. You always were the glue, she said softly. That's what makes this so satisfying. I smiled into the phone. Yeah, but not anymore. When the call ended, I ordered a steak, ate it by candlelight on the beach, and let the sound of the waves erase whatever sympathy still clung to my bones. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I just existed. Calm, content, unbothered. Later that night, I opened my blocked messages just for fun. Missed calls, new texts. One from an unknown number I'd bet my passport was Mom. Your sister is heartbroken. Don't be cruel. Be the bigger person. I rolled my eyes so hard I saw constellations. It was always the same pattern. They mistreat me, then expect me to rise above it. To clean up after their storms, to be the good one. But the truth is, being the bigger person gets exhausting when you're the only one trying to be a person at all. This time I didn't reply. Instead, I posted a picture of the moon reflecting on the water drink in hand and captioned it. Peace isn't found in apologies, it's found in absence. By morning, the post had dozens of comments. Friends, distant relatives, even old coworkers. Living your best life? Should have brought popcorn to that wedding. Whole family's shaking right now, I just know it. It was entertaining, sure. But more than that, it was validating. For once, people weren't asking me to play the part. They were just watching me live. Around noon, I got another message from Marissa. Okay, so Mom and your mom are planning to ambush you when you get back, just saying. I texted her back immediately. Thanks, I won't be back. Wait, what? I extended the trip. Another week. They wanted space from me, they got it. A few seconds later, she responded with, "That's iconic. Honestly, I support it." That evening, I stood at the edge of the water breeze, warm toes buried in the sand. I thought about all the times I'd shown up for Harper. The times I dropped everything to help. The times I'd swallowed my pride just to keep the peace. And then I thought about that message, the one that cut me out without hesitation. That small, cold dismissal. They made a choice, so I made mine. As the tide rolled in, I took one last picture. Me, barefoot, drink in hand, horizon burning orange behind me. Caption: out of sight, out of reach, out of roles to play. Then I turned off my phone. Again. And this time it stayed off. The morning after I extended my trip, I didn't wake to a buzzing phone. I woke to waves. That steady hush of salt water pulling back into itself, a sound that felt more like a heartbeat than noiseless. I stretched, opened the balcony doors, and let the air in. It smelled like citrus and peace. I made coffee, pulled the chair outside, and sat for a while just watching the world move without any obligation to join it. The ocean didn't care if I answered texts. It didn't need me to solve anything. For the first time in years, neither did I. When I eventually turned my phone back on purely out of curiosity, not responsibility, the screen bloomed with missed calls, unread messages, voicemails, even emails. I scrolled through a few without responding. My favorite was from Mom, written like a sermon. Your sister is devastated. I hope you're proud of yourself. This isn't how families work, Caleb. We forgive. We come together. We don't run away when things get hard. I almost laughed. I hadn't run. They pushed me out and were stunned I didn't come crawling back. She made it sound like I'd abandoned them in a burning building instead of taking a vacation they chose not to include me in. The next email was from Harper. Short, sad, probably rehearsed. I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you. I really thought you'd understand. I was under so much pressure. I just need my brother back. It didn't even make me angry, just tired. She didn't need me, not really. She needed what I used to be, dependable, predictable, quick, to forgive, slow to leave. That version of me no longer existed. I'd buried him somewhere between the third mimosa and the moment I realized I was allowed to take up space in my own life. By noon, the resort was quiet. Most guests were off doing excursions or napping off lunch. I wandered down to the beach, grabbed a hammock under the shade, and opened a book I hadn't touched since college. Something about rereading a story you used to love hits different when you're a new version of yourself. I read a few pages, then set it down, thinking instead about how often I'd edited myself to keep the peace. Harper had always been the loud one, the dramatic one, the center of gravity in every room even when she didn't deserve it. And I was the shadow, the extra, the sibling with the quieter laugh and the wallet that always opened when she needed it. I never asked why, I just did it, until she made it clear I was optional. And that was the turning point. They didn't uninvite me from a party. They removed me from the narrative. I had every right to remove myself from their cleanup. Later that day, I ran into a couple at the bar. Newlyweds tan and glowing, sipping frozen drinks with silly names. We chatted for a bit where we were from, how long we were staying, basic travel banter. Eventually, the woman asked, "What brings you here, honeymoon escape?" I thought for a moment. Something like that, I said. A wedding fell apart, just not mine. She laughed. Oof, rough. I smiled, not for me. Back in my suite that night, I poured myself a drink, sat by the balcony, and let the sky bleed colors across the ocean. No noise, no drama, just silence. That's when a new message popped up, Marissa again. Okay, so Harper's trying to do damage control. She posted a statement. I raised an eyebrow, sipped my drink, and opened Instagram. Sure enough, there it was. A filtered photo of Harper sitting alone in her wedding dress, face perfectly tear-streaked, captioned with something dramatic. Not all fairy tales end the way you imagined, but they teach you who's really there for you. I tilted my head unimpressed. The comments were full of hearts and "you're so strong" from people who weren't at the wedding. But one caught my eye from our cousin Lex. You should have invited your brother. A few others chimed in. Where was Caleb family first, remember? I didn't respond, I didn't need to. The silence was louder than any comeback I could have typed. The next morning, I checked out of my suite and into an upgraded villa by the water. Private plunge pool. Hammock. Outdoor shower. The kind of place you book when you stop apologizing for wanting more. I paid in full, no hesitation. The old me would have hesitated. The new me tipped extra. I took a photo of the view sky meeting sea like they were shaking hands and posted it with no caption. Just the location tag, freedom. By mid-afternoon, I was lying poolside, music, soft sun, slow moving across my skin. That's when Marissa called again. I picked up knowing if she was calling, it was worth hearing. You're gonna love this, she said, barely containing a laugh. So Harper tried reaching out to Chase's family. Apparently she wanted to talk things through and maybe still have a ceremony later. His mom replied, "Get this, he's done. Don't contact us again." I sat up chuckling. Brutal. Oh, it gets better. Your mom is spiraling. She told Grandma it was your fault the wedding collapsed. Said if you'd been there, none of this would have happened. I blinked. Wait, so now I'm the villain for not being at an event I was never invited to? Exactly, but Grandma didn't buy it. She told your mom, you reap what you sow again. Twice in 1 week, she's on a roll. I grinned, letting the sun warm my face. Grandma might be the only one with sense. Marissa exhaled slowly. Honestly, it's like the whole family's finally seeing what you've seen all along. And they don't know what to do without you. Let them figure it out, I said. I'm done being their life raft. You sound different, she said after a pause. I feel different, I admitted, lighter. We ended the call with no pressure, no lingering weight. I stared out at the horizon, let the light shift over the water, and thought about how strange it is to discover freedom in absence. They thought excluding me was a message. It was, just not the one they intended. It told me I was finally free to choose myself. No more rescuing people who only remember you when it's convenient. No more saving people who wouldn't do the same. No more proving my worth in a family that kept changing the rules. They wanted a wedding without me. They got a reality check instead. And I got peace. The longer I stayed away, the more obvious it became how little I'd been living for myself. I hadn't planned for this to be a life reset. I just needed space. But somewhere between the morning ocean breeze and the slow sun-drunk afternoons, something started to shift. The world got quieter. My thoughts got clearer. And suddenly I couldn't unsee it. I'd been bending over backwards for people who never once turned around to see if I was okay. It had been 6 days since the wedding imploded. I hadn't responded to a single text from Mom or Harper since my last conversation with Marissa. I didn't need to. They were still trying, though. I checked my email that morning out of habit. 3 new messages, all from Mom. The subject lines read like a countdown, let's talk. Harper needs you, don't do this to our family. I opened the first one and read the opening line before deleting it. You've made your point, now it's time to come home. Made my point as if I was staging a tantrum. As if this was performative, not restorative. I wasn't making a point, I was making peace. I closed the laptop and walked outside. My villa's pool shimmered like a sapphire under the midday sun. A tray of fresh fruit and cold drinks had just been delivered. There was no reason to be angry here, no reason to defend myself, no audience waiting for my reaction. Just space. Just silence. Just me. I dipped my feet into the water, leaned back, and let the moment hold me. That's when my phone buzzed again. Another message from Harper. I just want to understand what I did to deserve this. That line hit differently, not because it hurt, but because it proved how deep the disconnect really was. She still didn't get it. To her, my absence wasn't a reaction to her choices. It was a punishment, an attack, a betrayal, the irony of it all. What she didn't understand, what none of them seemed to grasp, was that I didn't disappear to hurt them. I stepped away to stop hurting myself, and the longer I stayed gone, the less I missed any of them. By that afternoon, I'd booked a boat tour that ended with a private dinner on a dock lit by soft lanterns. A small group of guests chatted nearby, but I kept to myself. I watched the horizon swallow the sun and felt something unspoken loosen in my chest. That old not resentment guilt, years of obligation finally started to unravel. When I got back to the villa, there was a voice memo waiting for me. This time it wasn't from Mom or Harper. It was from Dad. I almost didn't recognize the name on the notification. He'd been distant for years, emotionally checked out since the divorce. Mostly a holiday text kind of parent. But something made me tap play. His voice was lower than I remembered, slower, unsure. Caleb, I know I haven't said much. I know I haven't been around like I should have, but I heard what happened, and I just want you to know I'm proud of you. You finally chose yourself. And I think that's long overdue. I sat there for a minute, letting it sink in. Proud of me. Not for fixing something, not for rescuing someone, just for finally walking away. It was the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged what I'd done without asking me to undo it. I didn't cry, but I felt something soften. The next morning, I decided not to check my phone at all. I left it in the room, grabbed a towel, and headed down to the water. I spent the day paddleboarding through coves and sipping pineapple cocktails from a floating bar. The sun pressed into my shoulders like a quiet reminder you're here now. Be here. Back on shore, I stretched out on a hammock and stared up at the sky through the palm trees. The clouds moved slowly like they had all the time in the world. And for once, so did I. At dinner, I ran into the same newlyweds from the bar again. This time they asked if I wanted to join them. I did. We talked about books, travel dumb things we did in college. No one asked about weddings or family or broken expectations. Just easy laughter and stories told over grilled fish and warm bread. When we parted ways, the bride hugged me and said, "You have a calm energy. like someone who's done explaining himself. I smiled. Yeah, I think I am. Later that night, I finally opened the last email from Harper. It was long. Paragraphs stacked like she'd been trying to write the perfect apology but forgot how to be human. There were excuses, pressure, stress, guest list politics. Then came the guilt. How could I abandon her? Didn't I know how much she'd relied on me? But she never once said she was wrong. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. So I closed the email. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my booking app, extended my stay one more week, and upgraded to the resort's best suite. Oceanfront, butler service, double balcony. It was wildly unnecessary. And completely deserved. That night, I sat on the terrace, wrapped in a robe, sipping aged rum from a cut glass tumbler, and typed out one final message. I didn't send it to anyone. I just wrote it for myself. You can't build a life on being useful to people who only notice when you stop. Then I deleted it. Some messages are meant to be felt, not sent. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling across the room like a quiet promise. My head was clear, my chest light. There were no voicemails from family, no unread texts waiting to drag me back. Just one message, from Marissa. Just FYI, family's trying to organize a healing dinner when you return. Mom's calling it a reset moment. Prepare for manipulation. I smiled and texted her back. Appreciate the warning, I won't be there. You're skipping the family dinner? I'm skipping the family period. She didn't reply right away. But 10 minutes later, a new message popped up. Honestly, good for you. Let me know where you end up. Maybe I'll join you. I looked out at the horizon, the morning light turning the sea into silver. Where I ended up didn't matter. What mattered was that I wasn't lost anymore. The thing about peace is once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. Once you taste what it's like to wake up without anxiety clawing at your chest or obligation weighing down your spine, you start to question how you ever lived any other way. I had spent so much of my life being available, always answering, always stepping in, always patching the cracks so no one had to feel the cold. But no one ever turned around to see who was standing in the draft. My new suite was the kind of place people book for honeymoons or proposals, high ceilings, clean white walls, windows that opened fully to the ocean. But I didn't feel out of place in it. I belonged here. Not because I was celebrating anything, but because I'd stopped waiting for permission to be happy. It was my 10th day away from home. 10 days without forced conversations or unspoken expectations. 10 days of living in the present, no longer orbiting the emotional gravity of people who only pulled me in when they needed something. The family group chat, once buzzing daily, had gone quiet. Either I'd finally been accepted as absent, or they were regrouping for a new strategy. Either way, the silence was a gift. Marissa messaged again that afternoon. So they've officially changed the plan. Instead of a family dinner, they want to do a video call. Rebuild the bridge, in your mom's words. I didn't respond right away. I read it twice, then tossed my phone onto the bed like it was covered in static. They didn't want a bridge, they wanted a reset button. Something clean and fast that let them act like none of it had happened. But I wasn't interested in building anything that would just take me back to the same place I left. Instead, I pulled on a linen shirt, grabbed my book and sunglasses, and walked down to the beach. The tide was low, the sun soft against the water, casting long shadows across the sand. I found a quiet stretch near the rocks and sat there, letting the waves lap near my feet. For a while, I just breathed. No music, no phone, no distractions. Just breath and salt and the kind of silence that feels alive. And then, as if summoned by the universe, a man sat a few yards away from me. Older, weathered. He nodded once, polite but not nosy, then pulled out a fishing rod from his bag. We didn't speak, but at some point he turned to me and said, "You ever notice how people don't ask how the net feels?" I looked at him curious. "What do you mean?" He gestured to the rod, then out toward the sea. Everyone talks about the fish, the catch, the reward, but no one asks what it's like to be the net. Always holding, always catching, always expected to keep doing its job even when it's torn. That landed too hard, too true. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think I was the net for a long time." He nodded like he already knew. "You fix the holes or you let the ocean take you. Either way, you stop carrying what doesn't belong to you." That night, I didn't check my messages. I didn't check social media. I made a quiet dinner reservation for one ordered grilled lobster and something sparkling and let myself enjoy every bite. The server asked if I was celebrating anything. "Just peace," I said. He smiled like he understood. Back in my suite, I stared at my phone for a long time. Not because I wanted to reply, but because I needed to say something out loud even if it was just to myself. So I opened my notes app and typed, "I was not angry when they left me out. I was heartbroken." But heartbreak taught me what loyalty never did. Silence is not the same as peace. And forgiveness does not mean returning to a fire just because someone handed you water. I closed the app, no intention of posting it. I wasn't performing for anyone. I wasn't trying to be heard. I just needed the words out of me. The next morning, I woke up and stretched without checking the time. I wandered down to the buffet in my sandals and sunglasses, took a plate of mango slices, and sat alone at a corner table overlooking the beach. The breeze was warm, carrying the scent of salt and ripe fruit. I ate slowly, watching the world move without urgency. Marissa texted again. "They're asking about you. Harper said she's going to write you a letter, like a real one." I didn't even flinch. A letter didn't change the fact that when it mattered, she made a choice. And now that her choice had consequences, she was rewriting the narrative. I replied, "Tell them I'm not waiting for their version of closure." Marissa didn't argue, she just responded, "I'll save you a seat if you ever want to join my side of the family, the one with common sense." I smiled. She was the only one who never asked me to shrink. That afternoon, I wandered into a small boutique near the resort. Handmade candles, woven bags. A woman behind the counter smiled and offered a glass of chilled hibiscus tea. We got to talking. She asked what brought me here. "Family drama," I said. She laughed softly. "That's what brings most people to paradise. It's either love or escape. Sometimes both." I nodded. In my case, they're the same. She tilted her head. "You leaving them or just finding yourself?" "Both," I said. "But I'm not lost. Just finally off their map." She smiled and handed me a candle. "This one's for peace. Light it when you forget you deserve it." I bought it without hesitation. Back at the villa, I lit the candle and let it scent lavender, and something warm fill the room. I poured myself a drink, pulled out a notebook, and started to write not a letter to them, but a note to myself. You don't owe anyone your return just because they finally noticed your absence. You were never a placeholder. You were never a stand-in. You were the whole damn story. And you still are. I didn't cry, but I felt something shift, like the last piece of someone else's expectation finally slid off my shoulders. That night, I watched the stars from my balcony. No noise, no guilt. No more explaining myself. And when the wind carried that quiet hush of waves against the shore, I let it wash over me, not as a memory of what I left behind, but as a welcome from the life I chose to begin. There's a certain kind of quiet that settles in when you stop waiting for things to go back to what they never were. It's not silence. It's not numbness. It's something cleaner. A calm that doesn't beg for closure or beg anyone to understand. It just exists, unapologetic and free. That's how I felt on my last morning in Belize. The sky was still painted with the soft gray of early dawn. The air was heavy with the scent of sea salt and warm stone. I stood barefoot on the balcony, coffee in one hand, suitcase already packed behind me, and realized I wasn't going home. I was just catching a flight. I hadn't told anyone when I was leaving. There was no reason to. No one needed to greet me at the airport or ask how my trip was. The people who should have cared were too busy trying to rewrite the story, and I wasn't part of the plot anymore. As I checked out of the resort, the woman at the front desk smiled and asked, "Was everything to your liking?" I returned the smile. It was more than I expected, and exactly what I needed. She handed me a card. "If you ever want to return, we'll be here." That simple line echoed in my mind as the shuttle drove me down the winding coast. We'll be here. No demands, no guilt, just presence. I realized how rare that was in my life and how much I'd been starved for it. At the airport, I grabbed a window seat, threw on headphones, and watched as the world I'd fallen into began shrinking beneath the clouds. And yet, it didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. It felt like I was bringing something with me, something solid, something I hadn't had in years. So, the plane touched down just after dark. I stepped through the terminal with no plan other than getting home, showering, and continuing to mind my own peace. But before I even reached the rideshare pickup, my phone lit up. A missed call from Mom, a voicemail, a new message from Harper. I didn't open them right away. I just stood under the orange glow of a street lamp suitcase by my side, letting the weight of everything that had changed settle around me. I wasn't the same person who had been blindsided by a text 2 weeks earlier. That version of me would have listened to every message, felt every word like a slap, and tried to fix things. Now, I pulled out my phone and listened to Harper's voicemail first. "Hey, I don't even know what to say anymore. I guess I messed everything up." I was so wrapped up in what I thought the wedding was supposed to be that I forgot who actually mattered. "I know you probably won't answer, but I do miss you, and I hope one day we talk again." It wasn't the worst thing she could have said, but it wasn't what I needed either. Then came Mom's voice, tighter, more familiar in its tone. "Caleb, I hope you're back by now. We need to talk. Your sister's still not herself, and this silence is helping no one. Please stop being stubborn and let's move forward. This family can't heal if you keep shutting us out." I deleted both messages. Not because I was angry, but because I knew what they were asking for and I wasn't interested in giving it anymore. I booked a ride home. The driver didn't make small talk, which I appreciated. I stared out the window, watching the city pass by, headlights and storefronts blurring together like background noise. I wasn't sad. I wasn't bitter. I just wasn't playing along. When I walked into my apartment, everything was exactly how I left it. Quiet, clean, familiar. I set my suitcase down, kicked off my shoes, and lit the candle I'd brought back from the boutique. That soft lavender scent filled the room, and for a moment, I stood in the center of my living room and just breathed. No one was waiting on me to fix anything. No one was calling me dramatic. No one was shifting blame or pretending the past hadn't happened. There was just air and light and peace. The next morning, I opened my messages, not the ones I'd ignored, but the ones I hadn't seen at all. Notes from old friends, a message from a former coworker. Your vacation posts gave me life. You look lighter, happier. One from a college buddy saw what went down with your sister. I'm not even surprised. Glad you took care of yourself. But the one that stood out came from someone unexpected, Chase, the ex-groom. I paused before opening it. It was short. I didn't have the guts to leave until I saw your post. Thank you for reminding me I didn't have to stay where I wasn't seen. I stared at the screen for a while. Not because I needed his approval, but because it reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. Sometimes walking away helps more people than staying ever could. I didn't respond. There was no need. His words weren't for me to carry. They were just a reflection. Proof that my absence had power. That choosing myself had meaning. A few hours later, Marissa called. I answered. She didn't start with questions. She just said, "Glad you're home," or "Wherever you are now." "I'm home," I said, "but not the kind I used to chase." She paused. "So, what now?" Now I glanced around my quiet apartment, the candle still flickering in the corner. Now I live. Without apologizing. She exhaled. "That's the best thing I've heard all year." Before we hung up, she added, "You know, they're still waiting for you to call." "I know. Are you going to?" I smiled. No, my silence said everything they refused to hear when I spoke. That night, I sat down at my desk and started a new journal. On the first page, I wrote, "There's a freedom in not being who they needed you to be. A soft, steady joy in existing for yourself. Not to hurt them, not to prove anything, but to finally breathe without waiting for someone else to give you permission." I closed the journal, stared out the window. No storms, no shouting, no guilt wrapped in concern. Just the quiet click of a page turned, a chapter closed. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I didn't even need them to understand. Because I'd found something better than being included. I'd found myself. Story 2. My 16-year-old sister is the accused. In order to escape 20 years in prison, I agreed to a 5-year probationary period. Her spouse discovered the truth 10 years later. I was quite close to Elise, perhaps more intimate than most siblings, even though they are 4 years apart in age. After everything that had transpired, we were almost best friends. I know that seems odd, but it was the norm in those days. In school, I was never the sharpest kid. I've always struggled academically, barely passing the majority of my subjects. However, I was more interested in disassembling and reassembling electronics than I was in programming or computers. I began by gathering vintage radios and TV remote controls from yard auctions. I had an entire system in my room by the time I was 16. Crates containing circuit boards and cables, multimeters, and a soldering iron. Given that I would spend hours inside with the door shut, my parents found it odd. At least you got it, even if it will be crucial later. When I initially started taking it seriously, she was 10 years old, and she would spend hours watching me work in my room. She would interrogate me about how each component operated, why I was connecting particular wires and other things. Sometimes she would hold my pieces as I soldered, or she would assist me in organizing them. You know, it was our thing. Our parents did, however, show preference. Elise was the perfect pupil, the gymnastics team at Straight A Council of Students, the entire bundle. I was spending all of my time at the skate park or in my room with gadgets, hardly making it through my classes. Alice, however, was always there for me. For instance, sometime in my junior year, I got discovered smoking behind the gym. Elise concocted a story about me holding the cigarette for someone else who had fled rather than suspending me. She even sobbed as she told the principal that I was attempting to make changes in my life and that a suspension would destroy everything. The principal believed it wholeheartedly. She assisted me with my assignments as well. She explained things far more clearly than my instructors did. She explained mathematical problems in a way that I could understand. To be honest, that was probably the only reason I completed high school. As the older brother, I also watched out for her. I was quite defensive. In retrospect, I questioned if I was being too protective. I was the first thing any guy interested in her had to deal with. I didn't mean to be impolite. I simply didn't want my younger sister to be messed with by an unknown individual. I got into trouble, went out late, and hung out with the wrong crowd, but Elise never made fun of me for it. She would excuse me from curfew and cover for me with our parents. She was waiting for me on the porch when I got home at 3 in the morning just to make sure I got there safely. Taking a look back, maybe we were too near. Maybe this explains why many were so ready to believe what she later said. But at the moment, it felt normal. She was the one person who really understood me, my sister, and my best friend. Our parents made an effort to pique my interest in everyday pursuits. They had enrolled me in after-school programs and sports teams, but I had always gone back to using my electronics. Elise would stand up for me even when they said I was wasting my time. He does it well. She would say something. Allow him to pursue his passions. I try to think about Elise like that, the younger sister who had faith in me while others had lost faith. When I was working on projects, she would bring me food, who trusted me enough to confide in me about her problems and who would stand up for me in front of our parents. Writing this is more difficult than I thought it would be when things began to unravel. I had recently finished high school and was 18. At the age of 16, Elise began to get attention from boys at school. I did what any big brother would do since I was an overly protective brother. Frightened them off. No one was being beaten up by me. I just wanted them to be aware that I was observing. One elderly man, John, who was very obstinate, was driving a fancy automobile that his parents had purchased for him. The usual conduct of privileged children. One day I saw him trying to get Elise to skip class with him. I should have never shoved him against his car, but he was trying to talk my 16-year-old sister out of going to school, and he was 18. Would any brother not be furious? The rumors started at that point. It was only murmurs at first. People at Elise's school made comments about how odd my overprotective behavior was. Then, things became worse. Someone started to give an explanation. I wanted Elise for myself, which is why I didn't want other males around her. I can still clearly recall the precise instant I realized something was really wrong. After school on a Tuesday, it was. Typically, Elise would visit my room and spend time with me as I worked on my assignments. However, she went straight to her room this time. She told me to leave when I knocked on her door to see how she was doing. When I tried to give her a hug later that evening, I found her sobbing in the kitchen. She recoiled, really flinched away from me like I usually did when she became upset. It had never happened before. Muttering that she was tired, she went back to her room. The days that followed were peculiar. She no longer visited my room or even spoke to me. Really, I thought she was just going through a phase of adolescence or something. I ought to have been more aware. Then one morning, I heard a knock on our front door as I was working on an old radio I had discovered. The loud formal knocking that makes your stomach turn is not just any banging. When my father answered the door, he saw a woman in a suit standing there with 2 police officers. They requested a private conversation with him first. In the kitchen, I could hear them talking, but I was unable to follow their conversation. My father then called me down. I will always remember the look on his face, as though he were staring at an unknown person. The woman in the suit identified herself as a Child Protective Services worker. According to CPS, they needed to interrogate me about my connection with Elise. Elise had informed her guidance counselor that I had been touching her inappropriately. She claimed that I made her enter my room by forcing her to do so, which is why I kept the door shut. The rest you can work out. She explained to them that I was so hostile toward men who expressed interest in her because I threatened to harm her if she informed anybody. She also claimed that the wires and zip ties in my room were for other purposes and that I had used the electrical equipment as a cover. Nothing was questioned by my father. As they talked, he simply stood there nodding as though he understood everything. The closed door, the hours spent in my chamber, and his protectiveness of Elise added up to something negative in his mind. I tried to explain by pointing to my projects, the partially fixed radio on my desk, the circuit board crates, and the outdated electronics. They had already made up their minds when I attempted to describe how Elise used to sit and watch me work and how she would assist me with organizing parts. Did you make Elise feel special by allowing her to help you? Was one of the leading questions the CPS officer kept asking. Did you let her know that she was unique among the other girls? I simply made it sound worse with everything I said. Elise had also twisted it when they asked about the time I shoved John. She said that I couldn't handle her growing up and forming regular connections because it would mean losing control over her and that I was jealous that she was beginning to like other men. Which aspect is the worst? She gave a lengthy speech on how since she started to distance herself, I had grown more hostile. I informed her that by talking to other men, she was betraying me. I almost believed it because of the way she described it, even though none of it was genuine. Then in front of everyone, I lost it. Elise. What on earth do you mean? My voice broke. It was because I couldn't believe it, not because I was upset. She refused to give me a look. Look at me, Elise. With her arms wrapped about herself as though she were a little fragile object in need of defense, she maintained her eyes on the ground. That small act simply infuriated me. You are aware that this is untrue. You are aware of it. Desperate, I resorted to our father. Dad, you know me, come on. Never would I. Despite his calm, quiet voice, his look, he was staring at me in a way I had never seen before. I'm not unhappy, not upset, just completed. You're not even interested in listening to me. He held out his hand as though I were a threat as I tried to get closer. Elise winced. She winced. That was it. I realized then. You can't take this seriously. I dropped my voice. Immediately, I lost all will to fight. I gave Elise another glance. Stared at her, really. She continued to avoid looking at me. Why are you doing this? I whispered. After a while, she glanced up. It seemed for a moment that she was going to say anything, maybe even to take back what she had said. She then turned to face the officer, the CPS woman, and her father, who were standing in our living room. At that point, she intensified her efforts. Tears were streaming from her eyes. She mumbled, taking a worried breath. Eric, I apologize. It dawned on me abruptly that it was too late for her to return it. She was terrified of the repercussions since she was in too deep. To be precise, I chuckled. Whoa. I said, this is what you're actually doing. Are you really doing this? Elise wrapped her arms tightly about her body. I simply couldn't contain it any longer. Dad's jaw tightened. Gather your belongings. The station is where we're heading. And that was all. There are no significant issues, no proof, and no trial. As though I were already guilty, my father silently took me to the police station. No longer his kid, but a stranger. All I could think about on the way to the police station was how they managed to squeeze everything in. The lonesome elder brother who stayed in his room all day. That weird hobby with all the cables and tools. Protective aggression. An intimate relationship that abruptly soured. They got exactly what they were looking for. The interview room at the police station. Look, that looks like a movie one. Before two detectives showed up, I sat there for what felt like hours, using phrases like, we just want to understand what happened. Rivers, the male investigator, played the role of the good policeman. Help us help you, Eric. I can't remember the name of the female investigator, but she sat there taking notes and glaring at me. Rivers began investigating my interest in electronics. Tell me about your constructions, he asked, trying to come across as curious. I thus described how to fix old radios, build simple circuits, and cover other fundamental ideas. Elise would also assist you with these tasks. Yes, I said. She would hold items and arrange pieces as I soldered. She enjoyed finding out about it. The female detective interrupted. So she would be by herself in your room, the doors locked, taking care of your gear. I became aware of how they were skewing everything at that point. Now everything that was normal sounded strange. They continued to press against the closed door. Since I had pricey tools, I locked it. I tried to clarify. Dad would take things and not return them. Or perhaps. Rivers answered, his tone hardening. For other reasons, you locked it. They had a whole file with statements and proof that I started abusing her when she was 12. She showed interest in my projects at the perfect time. How I isolated her using electronics, taught her things no one else knew, making her feel unique. That's crazy, I said. She is my sister. She was interested, so I was teaching her. Either intrigued by electronics or terrified of the consequences if she wasn't, the female detective leaned forward. The John incident was then brought up. But according to their version, I attacked him because he was robbing me of Elise. Other students at the school had testified to my protective nature and how I frightened away anyone who dared to approach her. That morning, Rivers pulled out some pictures of my room. It had been made to resemble a torture cell. Close-ups of my cords, tools, and cable management zip ties. The photos even made my project notes look ominous. Elise and you would be alone in this room for hours, according to your father. Rivers made a joke. Do you want to share what actually transpired there? I went crazy. They began to complain that they were demeaning the normal brother-sister relationships. It was a poor decision. Rivers simply gave me a nod as though I had verified something. He informed his partner that it was a typical defensive response. They then mentioned my academic performance, my lack of friends, and the time I spent by myself in my room. They thoroughly characterized a reclusive, disturbed man who was enamored with his sister. Exploration was not all they were doing. They had a case to make. And I appeared more guilty the more I rejected it. If you can call her that, she's my lawyer. Hardly retaliated. We should think about a plea agreement, she remarked, as if it were my only alternative. After hours of this, you might face 20 years in prison if this gets to trial. Look, Eric, here's the deal, stated Rivers at last. We have enough to cover costs, serious accusations. However, if you collaborate with us, acknowledge the incident, and express regret, we are able to assist you. I reiterated that I had done nothing wrong. For the 100th time, perhaps. Next, describe why Elsa would fabricate this. It didn't make logic, therefore I couldn't. I had taken care of and protected my sister, and she used to wait until I got home safely. Why would she do that? The part that follows is a little hazy. Attorneys were consulted. Elise's parents had rented one for her, but they insisted that I obtain my own. They appointed me a public attorney who had just graduated from law school and was already convinced that I was guilty. She outlined my options. I could resist. She did, however, make it clear that success was not likely. Juries believe victims, she said bluntly, and Elise's young, persuasive, and passionate description of the situation revealed the facts. I could have spent up to 20 years behind bars if I went to trial. A lifelong registration, 5 years of probation, and no jail time were all part of the favorable plea deal. The lawyer says that you won't have another opportunity if you lose this trial. Not even my own parents supported me. Dad just gave a headshake. He advised her not to put her sister through a trial, accept the offer. But I said I'm innocent. That's what they all say. Without raising her eyes from her papers, she said, "Your sister's testimony is with them. Recording of changes in behavior. Statements from witnesses regarding your possessiveness. A jury won't trust you over a 16-year-old girl who has experienced trauma." Before I agreed to the terms, my father paid me a visit. Since he dropped me off at the station, I haven't seen him. I thought he would realize the truth at last. "Just admit what you did, Eric," he urged instead. "Don't subject your sister to hardship. Please, Dad." I begged. "You are familiar with me. I would never, you know." He cut me off. "I believed I knew you." I suppose I didn't. My last meaningful conversation with my father ended there. I agreed to the deal 2 days later and entered a no-contest plea to child sex abuse. I was placed on the registry for life and placed on probation for 5 years. If I were innocent, some of you would ask why I would enter a plea. In actuality, they shatter you. They corrupt every ordinary part of your life until you lose faith in your own recollections. And you start to question if battling is worth it when everyone thinks you're guilty, even your own lawyer, the police, and your family. Your life is negatively impacted by being on the list in an unforeseen way. Everyone talks about the larger problems, like not being able to live close to schools or acquire specific professions, but the tiny things are what really matter. The woman at the first rental property I was interested in was eager for me to sign the lease after everything. She then finished the background investigation. I recall exactly how she looked when she saw what had happened. As though I were about to attack her in her workplace, she retreated from me. "I apologize," she said. "My grandchildren come to visit. You understand, I'm sure." That turned to become my life. People treat me like a monster and then apologize. It was a struggle to get a job. Most locations wouldn't even take a look at my application. If they knew I needed to look at that possibility. My few interviews all came to the same conclusion. "We'll give you a call." They didn't. I eventually located Mike, who ran a little manufacturing company. He attracted individuals that others would not. Former prisoners, people like myself, and addicts who are attempting to clean up. The work was hard and the money was awful. However, it was at least something. "I don't care what you did," Mike informed me on my first day. "Simply arrive on time and carry out your duties." I spent almost 2 years working there. After learning about me, someone started to stir trouble by informing other employees that I was dangerous and they shouldn't have to deal with me. Despite his best efforts to protect me, Mike had to let me go. "I can't risk losing my entire staff." He informed me. He gave me hefty severance compensation at the very least. Soon later, I lost my apartment. For a while, I ended myself living in my car. My greatest friend turned out to be a Planet Fitness membership, which cost $10 a month and included a shower and lavatory. If you didn't cause any problems, I would sleep in the Walmart parking lots, which are open around the clock. Normally, security would leave you alone. But it wasn't even the practical aspects that were the worst. Before they blocked me, I was seeing life on Facebook without me through common connections. I saw Elise receive a full scholarship to college, graduate with honors, and meet Billy, a wealthy man, at a campus event. In the meantime, I was trying to find a place to park overnight without getting harassed by police while eating cold ravioli from a can in my car. After I met Sarah at one of my jobs, I made the error of trying to date. She was kind and didn't inquire too much about my past. We made many outings. It was everything going well. She then asked me why I always needed to check the address of the place we were visiting. I choose to be truthful. I informed her that registration was required and that I should exercise caution wherever I went. I made an effort to prove my innocence and the baselessness of the charge. I need time to think, she stated. Her brother and 2 of his friends arrived at my place of employment the next day. I also had to quit that job. After that, I started going to this little branch of the library. Although she never spoke, the librarian there appeared to comprehend my predicament. She would just put items on the returns cart that she believed I would desire. Several publications on electronics and technical guides. She must have noticed what I usually read. She saw me browsing online classes one day, sat down with me, and helped me choose free ones to enroll in. Everyone has the right to education, she said. For the first time in years, she treated me with respect. Through those classes, I started studying about cryptocurrencies. I reasoned that I could accomplish it without having my background investigated. I discovered that I had a talent for understanding the technical aspects of things. I occasionally made some money through trading. What truly messed me up, though, monitoring remarks on Elisa's social media accounts. Everyone was talking about how courageous she was and how amazing it was that she overcame her trauma and succeeded. She also wrote a column for her college paper with a survivor theme. She was described to being inspirational. In the meantime, I was barely making it. Doesn't that operate in a strange way? I thought about attempting to clear my name, but who would take me seriously? Elise was an excellent, successful college student. Living in his car, I was nothing more than a creep. People like myself are of no concern to the system. I spent the most of my 20s doing it. I never stayed in one area long enough for others to find out about me because I was constantly changing jobs and places. Never make friends since they'll go as soon as they learn, so what's the point? I used to spend some evenings lying in my car looking through the old family pictures on my phone. These are photos of Elise and I as children, attempting to determine what went wrong and what I might have done differently. The problem with being on the list is that it does more than just rob you of your independence. Your whole identity is erased along with your past and future. You become a label and cease to be a person. Then, however, everything was different. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was working. I had secured a better industrial job than the previous one. Something forced me to open this email from a private investigator, even though I was on the verge of deleting it because I thought it was spam. According to the private investigator, Elisa's husband Billy paid him to look into her past. She had been acting suspiciously lately, so Billy started to look into it. The PI had found fault with her account of me and wanted to speak. At first I brushed it off. I'm tired of others interfering with my life. However, he then sent me another email confirming his legitimacy. I had never seen court documents, case files, or other material like this before. A restaurant just outside of town is where we first met. The detective, let's call him Frank, had a large bundle of documents. He strewn papers on the table and said, "Your sister's story is falling apart. I've worked here for 30 years. I've never witnessed someone so badly ruin their own lie." Elise had been careless, it turned out. Really careless. The period of time she gave for the purported occurrences did not correspond with school records. Every time she recounted the incident, her friends' witness statements varied. However, this was what truly caught me off guard. Do you recall the persistent advances on her from John the Senior? He wasn't just any dude snooping about, as it turned out. In secret, she was seeing him. Furthermore, she was discovered engaging in inappropriate behavior in his vehicle. She was certain that I would bring it up to our parents. Perhaps because she was aware of my constant protectiveness, or perhaps out of pure fear. Either way, she needed a diversion. Something big and beautiful enough to make sure no one was thinking about John. Knowing that nothing else would matter once the accusations were made, she made them up. Elise believed the messages between her and her friends from that period had been erased, but Frank had copies of them. In fact, she had everything prepared. We spoke about how she needed a nuclear option to silence me. It went beyond than she had anticipated. Reading these texts, Frank informed me it appears that she assumed they would simply send you away to live with family or something. She was too afraid to take it back when your dad went all scorched earth. I read everything as I sat there, seeing confirmation of what I already knew. Frank went on, "She has been acting strangely recently, so Billy hired me. Excessive drinking and developing paranoia. When he inquired about you one evening, he saw her sobbing over old family pictures. She stopped talking altogether. He gave me a call at that point. Frank then distributed Elisa's signed confession as the last paper. She broke down and told Billy everything when he presented her with all the evidence. There's something I need you to understand," said Frank. "Everything won't be miraculously fixed by this. Although it's a start, the legal system dislikes acknowledging its error. I have copies of everything he left me. I read it all through the night, from the text in which she hatched the scheme to the confession in which she finally came clean. I even came across some of her articles on a website that discussed how to strengthen allegations of abuse. I called an attorney the next day. I got a real one this time, not some overburdened public attorney who had already found me guilty. Based on new evidence, we requested post-conviction relief. My attorney said that Elisa's confession and the irregularities Frank found were enough to reverse my conviction and remove me from the list. A court made a decision in my favor after months of hearings. My record was completely erased. I ought to be relieved. I ought to have sensed something. However, my only thoughts were on how long it had taken and how much I had given up in the process. An envelope showed up in my mailbox a week later. I knew who sent it before I opened it, but there was no return address. My parents' first communication in a decade. My hands were shaking when I tore it open, not with excitement, but with utter incredulity. A letter in my father's stiff, indifferent handwriting was inside. Elise had finally come clean and they wanted to meet her. Well, in part, she presented a diluted version of events, presenting herself as a scared young girl who had committed a grave error. The deliberate falsehoods and the years of suffering she inflicted on me were not mentioned. But it seems like this was sufficient for them to acknowledge my innocence at last. They probably thought the $50,000 check in the mail was generous, as though it would somehow reverse 10 years of being viewed as a monster. It seems as though it might restore the years I've lost. Existence and respect. After a moment of holding it up to the light, I burst out laughing. There had been no change. They continued to think that a price tag could solve all issues. I didn't need the money. Someone else had to tell me the truth. I then called Frank using his number. When I finally phoned, my hands trembled. After a few rings, he answered in a nervous tone. "Hi, Billy. It's Eric." They warily asked, "Eric who?" After a protracted delay, I waited for the agony to subside before answering. "Elisa's brother." A low, unfunny chuckle followed by silence. Elise never mentioned having a sibling, which makes it amusing. Actually, I never brought up any relatives. I suppressed the growing anger in my chest. The skeletons in her closet couldn't be running their tongues over those tracks, can they? Billy's breathing is rapid. Jesus, this was something I knew she was hiding. This wife and I have been married for many years. I didn't even realize she had a sibling when I had a child with her. Not that she didn't ruin it all. I said it plainly first. Before he muttered, there was another pause. Incredibly so. There was a sharp edge to his voice, as if he realized how deeply he had been duped. Then with a grunt, he spoke once more, this time with power. "Final. I'm going to file for divorce." At first, I remained silent, letting his words hang between us like a burden. Even though he couldn't see me, I nodded at last. "Excellent." I said, "You're worthy of better." Then I hung up the phone. Saying anything more is pointless. However, I felt a weird sensation of relief as I placed my phone down. Then I came across the posts on social media. Before deleting all of her accounts, Elise gave a thorough explanation of how, as a youngster, she had misremembered some things. She presented herself as a helpless, confused girl who had erred. Her lovely life started to fall apart as she boldly revealed the truth. Then, Billy filed for divorce. The school where she was employed. Indeed, she went on to become a teacher. Consider that. Asked her to step down. As it happens, they don't enjoy having instructors who have acknowledged fabricating abuse reports. Billy had full custody of their child, I found out later. It was said that Elisa's confession demonstrated her instability. She made an effort to counter it, but Frank's investigation had uncovered more falsehoods. A large number of them exist. What is the real truth? For years, she had been lying about everything, not just about myself. She also concocted tales about other people. She used to blame males for a variety of offenses when things didn't go her way. Some wondered why she finally came clean. Frank said my folks had started to take notice. For months, Elise had been acting strangely, going missing for hours at a time, losing her temper over nothing, and drinking too much during family get-togethers. When she made a mistake during a furious argument with my mother, it was the last straw. She yelled out that if Dad hadn't overreacted, Eric wouldn't have suffered. My mom stopped and asked her for specifics. Elise tried to change her mind, but it was too late. Already doubt had been sown. My father, who was always in charge, started to dig. He got in touch with Elisa's old high school pals and other acquaintances from her past. That's when the gaps in her tale started to show. Elise was already in a downward spiral, trying to patch up a lie that was coming apart quickly. She therefore believed that the proof was long gone when Billy showed her the texts, the evidence, and the discrepancies. She lost it. My phone then rang. It was my mother. She sounded weak like though she had been sobbing for hours. "Please, Eric, we must speak." Her tone kept me on the line even though I was on the verge of hanging up. She started discussing Elise and how she had at last given them her version of events. Although she was young, she acknowledged that she had made errors, confused and scared. According to my mother, she is no longer the same person. She is shattered. Eric. Every day she sheds tears. She can hardly live with herself since she knows she destroyed your life. However they did plead, "Can't you just forgive her?" This infuriated me. Part of me as though she had stolen and wrecked my car, as though she had stolen my money. She had to go on and play the victim for years, leaving me in ruins as if she hadn't ripped away my entire life. "You're not understanding." My mom went on. "Now she's also in pain. I made the decision to meet them at that point. Not meant to bring closure or mend a broken family ties. I wanted them to know just how they had harmed me." "All right, let's meet," I said. However, I was well aware of how things would end. Halfway between our cities, we met at a restaurant. When Mom saw me, she burst into tears. Dad just sat there looking frail and ancient. Maybe you get that feeling when your golden child turns out to be a liar. Mom tried to give me a hug. I stepped back. I suggested that we simply take a seat. They had prepared a speech in which they expressed their regret, argued that they should have trusted me, and expressed their desire to mend our family. Dad even produced his checkbook once again, as if throwing money at it will make it all go away. "Put that away." I gave him instructions. "I'm not here to take your money." As she went on, Mom said things like this. "At the time, we did what we believed to be proper in order to protect your sister. As usual, I'm making excuses. I let them to speak among themselves." Then I pulled out the package Frank had given me and started reading out loud the messages Elisa had sent, the ones in which she had planned the whole thing. I saw the expressions on their faces as they realized how badly their beloved daughter had betrayed them. She felt afraid. Mom tried to defend her. She was only a little girl. I was hardly an adult. Where was my protection, I asked. Where had I been given the benefit of the doubt? Dad made another attempt. "We are aware of our error. We wish to put things right, put things correctly." I chuckled. "Do you wish to make it correct? Could you please return my 20s? Can the registry be undone? The folks who treated me like trash, the jobs I lost?" As they ran out of arguments, they simply sat there. I filled them in on everything about my van life. I was eating cold food and taking showers at Planet Fitness since I couldn't afford a home with a kitchen. When I was at my lowest, I showed them the scars on my wrist. For the first time in years, Mom puked in the restaurant restroom. My parents were forced to face the reality, the indisputable proof that they had blindly abandoned their own son, that their golden kid was everything but. I witnessed their entire world imploding in real time as they sat in shocked silence. "Did you do this?" My voice was solid as I said, "You allowed it to occur." To defend himself, my father seemed to seek a quarrel. He didn't, for a change. He just tightened his mouth and stared at the table. But Mom persisted in her attempt. "We were only attempting to keep her safe, Eric. We believed we were doing appropriately." I took a deep breath and leaned back. "What's the worst thing you know I understand?" "Yes, I do. If I was a monster, you would have been acting in the way that any good parent would have. But you didn't even consider me. Never once did you find me guilty. Because you let me to decay because it was simpler than asking Elise questions." Her cheeks was wet with tears. "We were mistaken," she whispered. "We were completely mistaken. Yes, they were mistaken, and I took a time to process that. They were more than mistaken. However, there was nothing they said that could make up for what I had lost. 10 years of my life were spent as only a label." Mom's hands were shaking as she extended across the table. "Eric, please, the past cannot be altered." "We are still your parents, though. Can we attempt to solve this at least?" Before she could get close to me, I pulled my hand away. "Repair it," I scoffed. "How exactly do you repair 10 years, Mom? Tell me." She parted her lips, but nothing came out. At last, Dad said something. In an elderly, hoarse-voiced voice, he added, "You have every right to hate us. We are still your family, though." I give a head shake. "The number. The once you decided I wasn't worth fighting for, you ceased to be my family." There was a thick silence between us. Anger, perhaps even screaming, was what they had anticipated. However, I was above all of it. I didn't have to shout. Without my voice, they were drowning in their own embarrassment. Then Mom's last card was played. "Eric, Elise is also in pain." I gazed at her. Naturally. She would say so, of course. She stated that she lost everything. Her friends, her job, and her marriage. She was entitled to it. I said in a chilly tone. Mom flinched as if I had struck her. She decided. I whispered. I stared at them both. I had to pay the price for her lying. But you? I looked directly at my father, who trembled in my presence. You also made a decision. You didn't question your belief in her. You didn't hesitate to let them take me. For a moment, as if to block off the reality, Dad closed his eyes. Mom hardly raised her voice beyond a whisper. She has changed as a person. I chuckled dryly. I'm not either. That was the real tragedy, wasn't it? The kid they knew, the person who would do anything for his little sister and spend hours in his room repairing radios, was gone. 10 years prior, when they allowed the police to take me away, they had buried him. My father had put the check on the table earlier, and I picked it up. $50,000, which they probably fabricated because they thought money might reverse their behavior. After a moment of staring, I tore it in two. I said, I don't need your money. You have nothing to give me. Mom started crying. Dad remained silent. Like a man who has lost something he will never get back, he just sat there. I got to my feet. You made your decision, I said coolly. You have to live with it now. I left without turning around. When I walked out of the restaurant, I felt nothing. There was simply nothing, no alleviation from the burden on my shoulders, no feeling of achievement. And maybe it was the real resolution. I got a letter in the mail a few weeks later. I knew who sent it before I opened it, but there was no return address. Elise was the source. Before I opened the letter, I took a close look at it. It was a brief letter. I don't think you'll pardon me. I wanted to express my apologies. That was it. No justifications, no explanation is offered, only that I briefly held it before putting it down. I didn't reply. Indeed, after that, life did not miraculously go better. I would always carry the wounds from those 10 years and the harm was done. But at last I was free, genuinely free. I could finally live without the weight of my past now that my record had been cleared. I moved to a different location, started anew, and built my electronics repair company from the bottom up. And I haven't turned around. Everything about the life I'd left behind, even my parents, turned into ghosts. Maybe I'll feel something when I think about them. However, I was now at last living my life as I saw fit.